Alright, so let's see. Force Gaming's got a pretty good head on his shoulder, and if you're an over 30 gamer, he's got pretty good takes and a good perspective on games, so hey, that's me. So let's see what he has to say about D4 here. What does this guy know about quantum physics? Probably more than the other guy, honestly. Alright, let me get audio good. I swear the sounds that happen in this house, you never know. Okay. The pet? Yeah. Unfortunately, the pet is basically invisible, so we don't really give it a name. It's kind of a waste of a name. A neat idea, but they're too invisible. I'm not 30 yet. I hope I can understand the taste. Nothing about D4 Kekleo. You were in countless streams with people playing the playtest and you picked up nothing because I intentionally didn't pay attention. Fair enough.
Hey everyone, so today I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about my biggest critiques and concerns for Diablo 4. Now, if you saw the review that we put up yesterday, you'll know that my overall impressions of the game are very good. Like, I quite like D4.
I watched a little bit of his final review video. Not the whole thing yet, only about half of it.
Updates, additions, and
a third of it?
I think it has a great chance at longevity, but even without any of that, I still feel pretty satisfied with what we're getting at a base game, what it has to offer, and I am very much so looking forward to playing over the next few weeks. Like, it's gonna be a
I kind of agree with this. Like, so far from what little I've seen, Fractured Peaks and everything,
some parts of Diablo 4
I like it so far, and I'm sure I'll get my money's worth out of it one way or another.
I wish were already in the game, but they're not, and so the hope is that they eventually come later down the road. Okay, so let's jump right into it. My first major critique would definitely be the game's difficulty. Overall, it just doesn't feel very challenging. Now, when I mentioned this in the review, people pointed out, hey, well then why did you recommend people play on World Tier 1? So that recommendation is specific
to get to endgame as fast as possible.
Campaign, if and only if your goal is to reach endgame as quickly as possible. If that isn't your goal and you just want a more challenging
the thing about World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 is World Tier 2 mathematically is not worth doing over World Tier 1 unless you want the additional challenge. But the, what is it, 20% increased gold and XP? Well, unfortunately, well, I guess one of the upsides is that you get higher monster density too, which might also help. So it's a little muddy depending on monster density, but at best it's only marginally worth more than playing on World Tier 1, and World Tier 1 is just going to be notably faster to get through. So if you're just trying to get to endgame, World Tier 1 is the way to go.
Experience as you play through the story, then yes, absolutely bump it up to World Tier 2. That's gonna make it take longer to kill everything.
Look at this, it's almost matching my voice. I don't want it louder than me.
Monsters that much more, and it should make combat feel a bit more rewarding. But what I'm actually referring to when I say that the game doesn't feel difficult overall is I'm talking about when you're playing on the highest world tiers. Because yes, once you do finish the campaign, you will want to be jumping and playing in World Tiers 3 and 4 as soon as possible, and that is where you're going to be staying, because that is where you actually have access to the endgame activities of Nightmare Dungeons and Hell Tides, and it's also how you start getting those higher tiers of items, the sacred items and the uniques. And from our experience so far, playing in those tiers, it really doesn't stay hard for very long. When you first make the jump, and if you're not geared up, your damage and survivability will be a bit low. But then after just a couple of hours and a bump in your item level, quickly becomes a cakewalk. I think the perfect showcase of how easy it is, even in World Tier 4, is just the fact that how quickly we can clear boss fights. Both the end of dungeon bosses that you see, but also the world bosses were dying very quickly and without much difficulty on World Tier 4, while we were not even max level. I mean, the fact that this is happening on the highest world tier, that's a bit of a shame. And the point
I kind of agree. The highest world tier should push the difficulty, but I'm also thinking back to other titles at the point where they released. Diablo 3 was tough as fucking nails if you were pushing the torment levels. So that's maybe not a good example because that one came out of the box hard as nails. But like Path of Exile, when it first came out, it was pretty much a cakewalk too. They had to kind of figure out where their starting point was and then kind of develop difficulty from there. But a release Path of Exile was not a difficult game at all. They've added difficulty since then in things like Shaper, Atziri, whatever else. I haven't played in a number of seasons, but I'm sure they've added other things now as well. The top tier map bosses and shit like that. So it's one of those things where you need a comfortable baseline to get people in, and then you develop the difficulty from there. So I'm hoping they develop the difficulty from there. Long term, that would be nice, but I don't think it's necessarily a huge issue right now. I think it's something that they can work on with seasonal updates and stuff like that. And hopefully we see the first difficulty bump in Season 1. But considering this game is a live service and needs a thriving player base that's going to stick with the game and not just immediately jump to the next new hype thing, which is what most of the casual player base does, they're going to have to figure out a way to draw in the hardcore players and keep them playing. So realistically, they don't really have a choice. They're going to have to figure out how to amp up the difficulty to keep people interested. Diablo 4 is very important for Blizzard right now. They need it to do very well, and they need it to do very well for a decent period of time while they right the rest of the ship. So, difficulty bumps will be coming, or ways of augmenting difficulty will probably be coming.
Of this is that even on that highest difficulty, all of those open world encounters really don't take too long before they become something that you just smash through. Since everything in the open world scales to your level, once you get the gear level and you have the account progression, you know, your Paragon boards and all of that, once that gets to a certain point, everything is just super, super easy from that point forward. Now, with that said, the Nightmare Dungeons are an entirely different story as those keep pushing higher and higher, and they remain a challenging activity.
So that's their current endgame challenge. Okay. So they've already kind of done that. So the Nightmare Dungeons are their current endgame difficulty push. Which makes sense. Like, again, thinking to Path of Exile, most of the game, including early mapping, is a joke. You just breeze through it. It's a couple of select difficulty areas that are hard. Like top tier mapping, Shaper, Atziri, Uber Shaper, or whatever you want to call it, things like that. It's not like the whole end game is difficult. Like, mapping is still mostly a breeze and stuff like that. So, Nightmare Dungeons being their difficulty point, that's kind of like high level maps being difficult. So that's a starting point. They'll build on it from there. I'm sure they'll add more difficult, bosses and challenges and shit. But this seems like an okay starting point.
All the way up to 100,
as long as they keep building on it.
So this is where we were actually presented with continuous bumps in difficulty. I just kind of wish that the rest of the game, especially all of that open world, and especially the open world bosses, didn't become so trivial so quickly, because there's a lot of content there. Like, the open world is a big...
So to this point, he and I are one of the very few people who seem to think this. Most people were pissing and moaning that the open world was getting more difficult with them. The majority of the player base did not like that. Or at least the vocal majority did not like that feature. Did not like the world scaling up with them, so it didn't feel like they were getting progressively more powerful against everything else. So... him and I seem to be... we seem to be in a small pocket of players, or a very silent majority, that actually like that. But that's how Diablo 3 basically did it, with the torment levels constantly scaling up. Essentially. But people didn't like that in Diablo 3 either, necessarily, so I don't know. I think this is just this is an issue that's probably not going to get resolved.
Big bulk of the game. It's one of my favorite parts.
I think
of the
instead
game,
they're just
and
going
I
to have
would have
specific
loved if it
difficulty
remained a
levers
challenge
for specific
all the way
content.
up to level 100. But as it stands, seems like once you get to around level 60, and especially
Uber
as you get
Series isn't
closer
even
to
hard
70,
anymore.
even on
Fair
World
enough.
Tiers 4, the open world is going to become a
You've been out of
breeze,
loophole, mate.
and
Yeah,
the
true.
only
I
challenge
have.
is going to be in the nightmare dungeons. Now, my second biggest concern is the fact that we haven't yet mentioned today's sponsor. Today's video is
Oh
sponsored
my
by Dungeon
God,
Fighter
not the
Online.
sponsor.
This is a free-to-play
How could we forget?
2D MMORPG beat 'em up with retro pixel graphics. It combines classic side-scrolling action with RPG elements and is known for its fast-paced gameplay.
I'm not zoomer enough for this shit. I can't tell what's happening. There's so many
You can choose
particles.
from more than 60 class advancements with unique abilities and progression paths to suit any style. Other features include PvP with ranked matchmaking, where skilled players can compete for recognition. It's also got advanced and Legion dungeons with their own special rewards for clearing. The most recent update to Dungeon Fighter Online, called the Archmage's Hall of Dimensions, is coming
Interested
out
in
on
playing
May
Diablo?
30th.
Would it be
This adds
advisable to
5
play
new
chronologically?
unique boss
Not
monsters that
necessarily.
can be played in 4 different
There's videos that'll
difficulties,
catch you up on
rewarding
pretty much
special
all the
equipment
lore.
which
You
can
don't
be
really
fused
need
into
to
its young
play it
characters.
chronologically.
If you are new and want to catch up, you can reach level 100 through the fast
I would just
leveling
watch the
mode,
Book of
receive special
Lorath
missions and
videos,
rewards for every
and
level, with even more
you're
missions
pretty much
available
caught up
after 100.
lore-wise.
To learn more about Dungeon Fighter Online and check it out for yourself, go ahead and use my link.
And while
in the
I do
description
love
below.
Diablo
okay,
2,
welcome back. Now let's go ahead and get on to the real.
at this point, its mechanics are kind of archaic. So if you're more used to modern gaming and you don't have that old school streak in you, you may not really like its mechanics anyway, because they're very old school. D3 is a bit more approachable, but I just generally wouldn't recommend giving them money for D3. It's fine. It's not a terrible game. Its endgame is shit, but you wouldn't be playing it for the endgame anyway. The story is also shit, which is what you would be playing it for. So I wouldn't recommend it for that either.
A second major concern, and that is that the boss
Not
fights
even a
are
Zoomer
too
game, it's old.
easy. Now,
Is
this
it
might
not even
sound a lot
Zoomer?
like the
Oh,
first
God.
critique, but hold on a second. It is different because I'm actually not referring this time to like the amount of health the bosses have or the amount of damage they do. I'm just specifically talking about boss mechanics. Pretty much every single boss fight in Diablo 4 can be boiled down to 2 things. 1, don't get hit by the melee attack or spell, and 2, don't stand in the fire. If you complete those 2 objectives, you just deal damage to the boss until their health bar reaches 0. Outside of that, the only other real mechanics I ever came across in boss fights...
So that's the same as pretty much every world boss in every game. Like, even going back to Guild Wars 2, which has a very robust world boss system, that's ultimately the same thing. World bosses, like, that's just largely boss design in general for most games, unless you're adding secondary mechanics. Which they could do for a world boss, admittedly. Guild Wars 2 eventually started doing that with some of their later editions, like the Tequatl update that they did. You know, now you have these turrets you gotta man, and you gotta have people going off and doing these secondary objectives, along with fighting the main boss and stuff like that. Same with the Shatterer rework. But for the most part, bosses are avoid these specific attacks and don't stand in the shit. I mean, that's all world bosses are... Most world bosses are. That's like, what else do? You can add things like, oh, somebody's got to go man these turrets, or oh, somebody's got to go push those buttons, or oh, there's a couple of ads over there, somebody's got to go take care of those. Like, that's really the only other levers you've got that you can do in such an uncoordinated fashion. So, admittedly, it'd be cooler if, you know, the world bosses were more like raid bosses or something, where they were mechanically heavy, but you've got, what, 12 random schmucks with no meaningful moment-to-moment communication? You can't really do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I have yet to meet a world boss in a game, other than maybe Triple Trouble in Guild Wars 2, where I was like, Jesus Christ. So...
3 of them. 1, you would get these totems that sometimes appeared and they would chain you to the ground. 2, there were some encounters, I think 2 of them, where the play space would shrink over time, making you closer and closer to the boss fight. And then the 3rd type of boss mechanic that I've seen is some invulnerability, where you have to usually kill some sort of structure or
secondary mechanics, yeah. I mean, that's about as complicated as a world boss is going to get.
All 3 of those additional things were showing up very rarely in boss fights. For the most part, Pretty much every boss is just a DPS and a survivability check. And there are very few additional layers of mechanics. And I was just really expecting
about what I
and
was
hoping
expecting.
for a lot more here. You know, since Diablo 3 came out over these past 10 years, there have just been so many other loot games that have showcased some real impressive boss fight mechanics. Other AR
Yeah, but the difference is those aren't world bosses where you get 12 random schmucks together. Those are bosses where you go in with either just yourself in the case of PoE or maybe one or two other pals. But you're all three in Discord talking about it anyway, so you got coordination. That's not what these world bosses are, so they were never going to be like fucking Uber Shaper, you know? That's just not going to happen. Now, what they could do is they could add raid versions of these bosses where they do amp up the mechanics and it's more instanced and it's just you and a group that you put together. 5 people, 5 people in this case, however many people can be in a group. They could do that. And Guild Wars also kind of played around with this idea as well. Sort of. With some of their harder world boss fights, some of the remakes, you could go in as like a guild group and do it as just your guild in an instanced version. But I think Force may have had slightly over-optimistic hopes for world bosses. This is about what I expected out of world bosses. Now, I will say, one thing you can do to make world bosses more exciting is have them drop unique loot. Specifically, visually unique loot. Or just, I mean, you could even just have specific unique items that drop only from them. You could do that too, but appearances would be more valuable long term. Like, you get almost spider-themed armor skins off of Surat here. Or something like that. Hiccup. Something like that. That would be a good way to kind of make them a little more exciting, while still sticking within the bounds of what you can do with 12 random people who have no meaningful communication and no control over who those 12 people are. So, raid party finder experience. Well, yeah, I mean that's another matter all in itself.
RPGs, MMOs, and looter shooters that have done this really well, and we've learned that there's just such a wide variety of potential skill checks and fail states and other mechanics.
Yeah, but you can't do that with 12 randos.
To boss fights
so.
beyond giving them more health. Or
I do hope they add challenge bosses like that into the game. They've already kind of toyed around with the idea with like the gatekeeping bosses, the gatekeep difficulty tiers. And I'm hoping that's something they play around with more, like this game gets its own version of like Uber bosses and shit, like, you know. That would be, hey, I think that would be good. That would work, but, you know, it takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Beyond giving them one shots or having them deal more damage. What are you talking about, Force? Isn't it all just move out of the fire and attack the boss? No, here's some examples. You can have a boss that debuffs players, one member of the party, or if you're playing by yourself, they'll debuff you, and you have to cleanse, or else it'll one-shot you or add a damage over time, or make the boss fight more difficult by boosting them up. Having items in the play space or interactables in the environment that you must engage with during certain phases of the boss fight.
He already showed a world boss that does this, though, so clearly they've already implemented some of these. Maybe it could be more frequent, but he's already shown a boss where you have to interact with the environment in order to progress the boss fight, so some of this is already in, clearly.
That's another layer, requiring precise positioning for certain attacks or phases, or that can even be applied into the debuff thing where these multiple layers of mechanics are stacked on top of each other. And then having things like enrage mechanics, where if you don't meet a specific condition, for example, if you don't get the boss to a certain phase by a set amount of time.
Again, having precise positional requirements is great in solo content, but when you have no control over which of the 11 other schmucks are with you, where there's no way to control who the boss is aggroed to or where the boss is being positioned, that kind of falls apart, you know? You can't really do that in one of these open world scenarios where you have to be precisely positioned for certain mechanics. So, again, he just has really weird expectations on what a world boss can be. But
boss gets stronger, making it more difficult. It doesn't have to be a hard fail, but more things to engage with, more mechanics would be great. Now, I'm not saying that boss fights
Polish
in Diablo
internet
4
is
have to be to the level
I
of
downloaded the
complexity
game at 90
of, like,
MBs
MMO raids,
in less
right?
than
It doesn't need to be
20
like WoW
minutes.
raids or
Cool.
Final Fantasy
Me too.
14 raids, or it doesn't even have to be like the mechanics we see in Lost Ark, although I would love some of that splashed in here and there. I just think there's a lot of things that could work really well in Diablo 4 that would add extra layers of difficulty and ways
I've done
to,
some of the Lost Ark
approach
world
these boss fights
bosses.
that-
They're no different than the Diablo ones. Stand in certain places, don't get hit by certain things, don't stand in fight, you know. I played Lost Ark. The world bosses in Lost Ark are not much different than the world bosses in Diablo 4.
I would appreciate, but just really isn't there. Right now, boss fights in D4 pretty much deal damage, don't get hit by the attack, and don't stand in the fire. That's 99% of the fights that you'll come across when playing in this game. The fact that Liam was like face tanking world bosses, not even with a care in the world, it shouldn't be that way, right? It would be great if it wasn't that way and there was more to it.
Well,
So
yeah, but he's also pushing item level and character strength, whereas that's not necessarily going to be the case when, again, you have 12 random schmucks. Who knows what the fuck their gear level is going to be. So the boss has to be set to a reasonable expectation for being in the open world. All of this is going to be solved when they start putting in challenge fights, challenge bosses, things you solo or 5-man, you know, with a coordinated group. Most of these concerns will then be alleviated because world bosses will just be the casual boss content for the casual player base, and then everyone else will be doing Ubers and shit. Which is exactly how it worked in Diablo 3. It's exactly how it works in Path of Exile. It's exactly how it worked in Diablo 2. That's how all ARPGs eventually boil down. So this is a pain point now, but will eventually be resolved as new content comes out.
I definitely think there's a lot of room for improvement here when they add future bosses down the road. If they could include more skill checks, more fail states, more mechanics.
The dungeon bosses, yeah, the dungeon bosses were, but now you're in another situation where now it's content designed around a smaller group of people, maybe better communication, where you can get more advanced mechanics and you have better control because you now have the concept of tanking and supporting and having these expected roles and expectations met with the group going in, or you're pugging it, and who the fuck knows, but there's at least an expectation of setup there. And an expectation that people have a general idea of how the fight goes and how to manage the mechanics of said fight, which you can't really expect in an open world when little Timmy could be a fresh level 80 who just rolls on in with his friend Billy and Jimmy, and they don't know what the fuck's going on, and you can't stop them from being there. So, you know, there's... Instance content is much different than open world content. You can do a lot more with instance content, especially solo instance content.
My third major critique would be around the inventory management. So while playing the game, your inventory will fill up very quickly. Usually, anytime I did a major activity, my inventory would be full and I'd have to go back to town, making regular trips to
that I
dismantle
agree.
or
The
sell off
inventory was
whatever
way
I was
too
carrying.
restrictive,
If I
and
did
gems
single
are a huge
nightmare
part of
dungeon,
that.
If I did a
Like,
round
look at how
true
much of his
Whispered
inventory is
quest,
taken up just by random fucking gems. It's awful. Gems take up way too much inventory real estate right now. Like, it was fine in D3 and D2, and D2 it was just one little tile out of your big spread. And, you know, in D3 it was, a little smaller square. But they were smaller in D3, right? Or were they big in D3? I don't actually remember now. Anyway, I would kill, and I agree with this criticism, I would kill for a fucking gem bag. That needs to happen. Gems either need to become a currency, or they need a gem bag. One of the two, because my god is it irritating filling your bag up off of gems. Ugh.
if I went into a Helltide. Anytime I did like one solid
One square in
endgame
D3.
activity,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
okay, there
usually
you go.
have to
They
visit
stack
the
in this
vendor
too,
or
but
the
now they're
blacksmith.
a bit more
Now, sure,
of
this
your
could
real
just be
estate.
alleviated by not picking up a lot of items, but honestly, I don't really feel like that's an option, especially with how important
It's an
yellow gear
ARPG.
is
You
in
pick shit
Diablo
up.
4. A
That's
lot
the
of
whole
times
point.
you can find pieces of rare yellow gear that contain the exact
Yeah.
stats and bonuses that you want.
They
for
just
build,
need a
like
gem
plus
bag. It's not
skills,
that
or
hard.
if you
Look
need
at all
your
these
crit
tabs
or
they have
attack speed
here.
or whatever you need.
Make one a
Paying
gem
attention to
bag.
the yellow drop seems pretty important.
Like,
It's
hold
not
on.
like you're just
Ah,
waiting
it's
on
blocking.
legendary.
All right. They have a quest tab. Only one or two items ever go in here at any given time. They have a tab for quests, but not for gems. Like, seriously? Honestly, I'd be happier if quest items just went into my main inventory and this quest tab was renamed gems. I'd be fine with that, because I never have more than 1 or 2 quest items on me at a time anyway. So, yeah.
Or above, especially
Good
with the
criticism.
imprint system where you can pull legendary aspects out of gear and then put it on rare pieces of gear. That's going to make you pay attention to rare pieces of gear. So
Never
I don't
made the
foresee me
aspects and
not paying
consumable
attention to rare
tabs.
pieces of gear, which means
You would
I
never
need to
have
pick it
inventory
up,
ever.
which means my inventory
It'd
is
be awful.
constantly filling up. But I think the biggest culprit and what makes inventory management a bit of a pain are the gems. They are just so annoying. They take up a massive amount of space in your bag. So there are 7 different types of gems, categories of gems, and if you're carrying one of each type, they'll just be taking up 1/4 of your entire inventory, and that's not even accounting for the fact that there are these 7 types of gems, but there are multiple levels of gems. So you can have like 1,
The
2,
gems are a
3
problem
of
right
just
now.
the
They
yellow
need fixed.
gems and 4 of the red gems. There's so many different gems. What this results in is you either have to keep going back to town to your stash to get rid of them, or you just keep the 7 gem types in your inventory constantly, and you just lose 1/4 of your inventory the entire time, which just necessitates more trips back to town. I know I'm going to be picking up gear. It's a gear game. We need to look at gear. We need to see what we get.
No idea what I'm watching. I'm going to be 300% lost.
Gems out of there.
Perfect. That's the best way to play it anyway.
Dealing with either dumping them in my stash or losing 1/4 of my inventory space. Please, please, please. The next big concern is the cash shop and the microtransactions.
Always.
So they didn't have it in the review build, but they did give us a preview of it through a press kit. What we learned is that we've got that paid currency. You can buy.
Yeah, standard paid currency bullshit obfuscates and basically gets them free money, because you're never going to have exactly the amount of coins you need. So you're always going to have money just sitting there. That's basically free money for Blizzard, especially when you pan that across 1 million players who all have 52 coins left over or 120 coins left over and nothing to do with them. It's a lot of free money for Blizzard. They don't have to give anyone anything in return for those. Amazing. It's shitty, scummy practice. It's honestly a scam. I hope now that loot boxes are under control, we can get obfuscation currency under control now as well. Once we remove obfuscation currency, now that loot boxes are gone, I think we're in a much better place with these cash shops. Those were the 2 big pain points with them.
Them in bundles ranging from $2 all the way up to $100. In the $2 to $10 range, if you purchase those, every $1 basically equals 100 currency. But then at the $25 bundle and up, they start adding bonus free currency, with the extra most bonus currency coming from that $100 bundle. So if you're someone who likes getting the best value,
loot boxes are under control a lot better than they were before. A lot of games are dropping them entirely.
They have lived up to their words, supposedly, at this point, by just offering cosmetics, a bunch of different bundles. There are a lot of $8 bundles, which will be 3 pieces, things like the death throws, and
let's see
in
here.
the $2 to $10 range, if you bundle coming from that $100. As for what it is you're buying, well,
so $13 for, I mean, it's pricey for what it is, but it's also a lot cheaper than the competition. Has anyone seen Path of Exile skin costs? I don't know if they've gotten any cheaper, but I remember a single outfit being between 20 and 30 bucks. $13 is a steal in comparison. Because there was a time I considered getting their bear outfit in Path of Exile, and I was like, I'm not spending 25 bucks on this fucking outfit. I like it, it's cool. I ain't spending 25 fucking dollars on this outfit. No thank you. So, compared to the competition, the prices are actually a little on the lower side so far.
Well, they have lived up to their words, supposedly, at this point, by just offering cosmetics, a bunch of different bundles. There are a lot.
This one's a little pricier. That's... Looks like they did a little more work to it, though. It's a little more involved. Maybe even has particle effects. Tough to say. Now that's Path of Exile prices right there. Hot damn. Does this one come with extra stuff, though? It might come with a little more. Yeah, it comes with more. This is just your armor. This also includes weapons, and what the... Is that a tattoo? The hell is that? I don't know what that is. That's some... So it comes with a couple of extra pieces. Definitely more detail work, a higher quality skin set. 20, I would never pay 28 for it, but it's competitive with the market, the going rate. So, you know. Now this I'd be a little more interested in. This is reasonably, oh, never mind. It's a shield, whatever this is. What the hell is that? Maybe I'm not interested in this. I thought it was like 3 legit items, but it's not. It's 1 legit item and then 2
And then
fillers.
there's anything for the 8-piece bundles ranging from $23 all the way up to $28.
Dopey.
These sets include the Death Toll.
Now that's a pretty, fuck, man, I love furs on armor. God damn, that is a nice look. Holy, it's only 22? Hot damn, it's because there's probably no particle effects on it or anything. It's just skins, so it's a couple bucks cheaper. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the $28 one is premium because it probably has other visual effects to it and stuff like that. So I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's still pretty in line with Path of Exile prices. I still wouldn't buy it. It's pretty and I like it, but I wouldn't buy it.
The Wraith Lord, the Fractured Magic, a lot of
Oh,
different
emotes? Yeah, it could be
cosmetics,
emotes, you're
taking up
right.
gear slots for every gear slot in each class. There's also cosmetics for the mounts and then back pieces. There were markings. Or
I mean, so far
tattoos,
this isn't that
basically.
egregious. I think it's
also believe they
overpriced,
sell
but
tombstones, which is just
whatever.
the thing that pops up on the
I
ground
don't
when
usually
you die.
cash shop
And then on top
anyway.
of that, there were these other
Other than battle
purchases called
passes.
add-ons. The Crypt Hunter add-on gave you a
$20. Hey, at least that one just straight up fucking says what the price is. No obfuscation currency. Huge. Oh, but it comes with some. Damn it. Well, close enough. You get an axe skin, normally the bedpost of a child's crib, the sharpened timber. So it's weapon skins and a mount. And then you get some currency to go with it. $8 worth of currency. So $12 for a mount and 2 weapon skins. Honestly, that's not unreasonably priced. I was expecting mounts to be $20 on their own, if it's anything like World of Warcraft's mount costs. Those are what, like $20 to $25 a piece? Most games that sell mounts, a lot of them, their premium mounts are usually in the $20, $30 range. Guild Wars 2 is like that as well. I have no idea about Lost Ark. I never really looked at their shop much. I knew it was pay to win, so I just got my fill of the game and moved on.
skin,
But this seems like a
couple of cosmetics,
reasonable
and then
price
800 platinum,
for-
and then you could spend that platinum in the store, I guess, on one of those $8 bundles if you wanted to, or maybe buy some
Up
more
to 35 in
amount.
amount. Yeah. So
23 to 28.
even by Blizzard standards, this is reasonably affordable. I don't think I. Oh, is it? Oh, that's not a. Okay. So these are not weapon skins. These are mount trophies, because you can see them on the mount there. Fair enough. Just popped in to say I hope everyone enjoys their next pilgrimage through Sanctuary. May you all be showered with legendary loot. I appreciate that. You too. Axe skin. You didn't even get the damn axe. It's not even an axe skin. It's something to put on your mount.
$8 bundles. It's a cash shop. The fact that the highest bundles that we see right now is $28. There are worse cash shops, but again, this is also
Path
the
of
cheapest
Exile.
version of Diablo 4, $78. What does it go up to? Like $90 or $100 if you want the ultimate highest edition of the game. So having $30 skin bundles and knowing that we've got a season pass coming out that has 2 paid tiers, it's a lot of extra layers now.
2
As I
paid
mentioned in the
tiers. I
review,
knew there
this
was
is
1
not a
paid tier, but
surprise.
there's
We knew
2.
this was coming.
Wait, is there 2 paid tiers? I thought it was 1 paid tier, and then you could get a version of it that also unlocked 20 levels by default. I think that's what it is. I don't think it's 2 separate paid tiers. It's just 1 tier comes with 20 unlocks automatically. Guess we'll find out.
And they have at least lived up to the fact that
Any of the
they're just
currency
doing
grinding the
cosmetics,
game, or
but
is it
now
only real money
actually
battle
getting
pass?
the
That
price
I have
points
no
on these
idea.
things.
As far
It's
as I'm
just-
aware, no.
When you add it all up, it is a bit of sticker shock. Like, there's a lot going on.
But I'm not
you know,
sure. Free
the argument, of
paid
course, is you
and
don't
paid
have
plus.
to buy
Paid
these
plus just comes
cosmetics,
with
and
20
people who
additional
do
levels
buy
unlocked
cosmetics are gonna be the
automatically,
ones
right?
supporting
Or not
the
additional,
seasonal
20
updates
levels
that we're
unlocked
getting.
automatically.
It's I don't know. I don't love it, but I
That's how it usually
understand that
works
as
with battle
part of
passes.
these
That's how
live
New
service
World's battle
games,
pass works,
this
for example.
is the fuel that keeps the engine rolling, right? This is the thing
And
that keeps the
an
content
extra
coming, 'cause
cosmetic,
otherwise,
okay.
they'll just take their money,
Understood.
peace out, and see us in 2 to 3 years when they release an expansion, and the updates we would get would be fairly
Exclusive to
minimal.
Pay Plus, fair enough.
What the seasonal
Well,
updates were.
are we
in
actually?
Diablo.
Has that actually been confirmed by Blizzard? Because I know people were wondering about that based off the wording of the Ultimate Edition, but as far as I was aware, nobody had any actual confirmation on that. That was just some people theorized that's what it meant, but nobody's actually sure unless Blizzard have actually come out and legitimately said, "Yeah, you get an extra cosmetic." Because like half the people think it comes with an extra cosmetic, and half the people think it's just weird wording, and it doesn't. Like that, the extra cosmetic is just the fact that you start with 20 levels already done, so you get those cosmetics right off the bat. I have yet to see anything official on that, so if anyone has anything official, feel free to link it or ask for permission to link if you're not a sub. Yeah. The $100 one comes with the creator emote, Wings of the Creator emote.
Diablo 3,
that I knew about.
That would just be the
But that's not
alternative
specific to the
situation.
battle
So
pass.
this is
That's
what
just
we have,
the
this cash shop,
ultimate edition.
even though those are some pricey bundles. This is what is supposedly going to be making those seasonal updates that much more extensive.
Yeah, cash shop seems fine for now. I wish they would get rid of the obfuscation currency, but other than that, prices seem competitive with the market, cheaper in some cases.
And then my last major point of criticism, and this is actually probably one of my biggest and just general critiques across all of Diablo 4, is that it just doesn't seem to have a lot of innovation to kind of push the ARPG genre forward. Now, yes, they have built a really solid core game. It is a lot of fun to play. I like the systems. I like everything about playing and spending time with the game. And I love that they have this big seamless open world. They've done a lot well about bringing elements together here. And I think they've made a great core experience. But there have been very few moments that I feel like there was something happening in Diablo 4 that I hadn't really seen in another game. Or what's even more, as kind of mentioned when referring to the kind of limited set of boss mechanics that this game appears to have, it seems like it's even lacking in a lot of areas. This isn't to say that I don't appreciate this really solid, competent ARPG that I enjoy playing and I'm looking forward to playing, that's also open world, that has these MMO-light elements. Those are cool. I just suppose I feel like I wish they could have taken some bigger swings, as I put it before, or tried a few new things.
So I've been hearing this a little bit, and I'm wondering what's left to do new in ARPGs. Like, I haven't been able to come up with any new ideas that seem compelling or interesting. Like, what exactly do ARPGs, what are they still lacking? What can you still do with them? Does anyone have any ideas? Like, I was racking my brain about this the other day because I heard somebody else say, there's nothing innovative about it. And then I'm like, well, what innovation is there left for the ARPG environment? Like, it's embracing the most recent innovation, going MMO light. As far as I'm aware, the only other ARPG doing that right now is Lost Ark, which is a pay-to-win disaster. So, I mean, it's kind of touching on innovation with that, but, like, what else do you do at this point? Randomly switch it over to a third-person shooter for some of the content? Like, what's left? I can't think of anything compelling. What's left to innovate on? And the ARPG space is pretty fleshed out at this point, I think. Short of maybe throwing in some augmented reality shit or something, I don't know what else they would do to really push the genre forward. The genre's kind of tapped out at this point. It is what it is. You either enjoy it as it is, or you're just never going to like it. VR ARPG, yeah, exactly. Booba, you can always add more booba. Fair, they could add more booba. Yeah, right now it just feels like the only thing that can be done is mixing different features in different... Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not a... I get where he's coming from with his statement. I understand. Like, it would be nice if there were ways to push the genre forward in a meaningful manner, but fuck, I can't think of any. And I don't think he's going to give an example, so I suspect he's probably doesn't have any in mind either. So it's like, what can they do? I don't think Blizzard can win in this department because I don't think there's any way to win anymore. Like, even Path of Exile isn't really pushing anything with its updates. It's just taking the same stuff and putting different coats of paint on it and slightly tweaking around its own mechanics to try and make the seasons different from each other. But there's just no innovation left for the market until some weird new technology comes out that can really amp things up. Right now, it's just not there. Virtual reality will probably be the next major jump, but right now, VR just isn't there either. We're going to need a couple more generations of VR before that's going to be a good fit. You know? So I'm not sure. Sub 331, what's good? That's the beauty of innovations. You don't know you needed it until someone comes up with it. Fair enough, but I'm not going to fault Blizzard for not coming up with it, because I can't even come up with it. Like, I've sat down and actually thought about it. Like, not just kind of casually waiting for something to hit me. I've actually tried putting time and effort into thinking about new innovations for ARPGs, and I didn't come up with anything that seemed worthwhile. So I don't know. Like I said, I get where he's coming from. I just don't think it's necessarily a fair criticism to leverage at this point in time.
To try to push things forward a little bit more. As it is, it does feel like they've played it a little safe. It is a good safe. It is a good thing that they've built. It's a good product. I like it. I'm looking forward to playing it.
Like, one thing I was thinking about is evolving items. Like, you get your unique items and you can kind of evolve and change them based on what you're doing with them. But then I thought about it a little harder, and that's already been done. That's probably where I got that idea from. There's already a game that's done that. Like, everything's been done in the ARPG space. There is nothing new left to do.
I guess I wish I would have had some more like, oh wow, look at that moments. And for the most part, I was never really surprised or taken aback by what I saw, as much as I do enjoy and appreciate it. So those are my major concerns. Quickly, I want to run through a few minor concerns. The max camera zoom, I just feel like it's
time is an illusion,
close.
understood.
This has been a common complaint. I'm not asking it to be back 50% or 100%.
Also, Blizzard is not necessarily known for innovating. They're known for taking what works and putting Blizzard polish on it, which I would argue is exactly what D4 is. It's the standard Blizzard fare. Take what's already out there, make it Blizzard. Now, that Blizzard quality is a bit lower than it used to be once upon a time, but that's still more or less what they did here. So this is about what I was expecting.
100% more. I think even just 10 to 20% more pushed back. There's actually a lot of times while you're playing the game, the camera will pull back just a little bit.
I also kind of
once
agree
it
with this.
does
Like,
those,
sometimes it's
those
way
particular
too tight.
instances, I get this sense of relief, like, oh, this is where I want it. This is where I like the camera. But then shortly after you leave, whatever that point of interest
especially
is,
when
the camera goes back to what I feel is a relatively tight and really, really...
Yeah, like, this is too fucking tight. Like, this is claustrophobically tight. And this gets worse. Like, in Fractured Peaks, there's certain areas where you're slightly going uphill, and it feels even tighter, because your character's now getting closer to the camera, and the camera isn't shifting back. Like, there are times where it feels like you're right up your character's ass. So, I agree. I would like a little more flexibility in camera distance. Like, when you're in town, or mounted, that's perfect. Just in general, that's perfect. So, a little more flexibility in that department would be nice. There seem to be a lot of people with this issue, so I imagine it's something that will at least be looked at, if not addressed sooner rather than later. Anyway.
Feeling a little claustrophobic at times, so just a little bit
Cyborgs
more back,
are good.
I think would be really
Remove
good.
the fragile
the skill
flesh,
tree,
true.
I had this complaint in the beta, and it's still the case
That's
here.
the
I feel like it's just a
Omnissiah
little
way.
clunky to navigate, especially respecking, where you have to pull points out of the end of the tree in order to change things in the earlier parts of the tree, because otherwise it's not going to let you remove points because it'll break the chain. I think there's a better way they can handle this. Kind of
that's
like
a little
work in
annoying.
progress mode, where you can confirm your build
Not being able
and
to break
not
the
have
chain.
to constantly move points from the end all the way to the beginning. And
This
then
is a
back to the
minor
end
one,
again.
but I agree.
The low-level
It's a
class
nice
balance,
little
this has been
quality
talked
of
about a
life
lot,
thing.
but it's a little out of whack, specifically for the barbarians and druid. I know they get really strong at endgame, but make them feel a little less like last place as you're playing and leveling up, because they just feel like a bit of a slog in those early levels. And the overlay map, I've kind of turned a corner on this. At first I was like, whatever, these people are just complaining, but I don't know, if people want to play with the map laid over the screen, let's just let them, I guess, you know what I mean? Especially it's going to be mostly for the hardcore
I think the
grinders,
mini-map's
and so
fine
it's
for
really
me,
not gonna
but I get
negatively
what
impact
people
the
are coming
experience
from.
of your core
Especially
casual
people are
base,
used to
which
just
is a bulk of
not
the people
having to
who are
look
gonna pick
up
and
for their
play Diablo
ARPG and just
4.
having
Now
the
that we've run
overlay.
through that, though,
I get it.
I really want to
I don't need it,
emphasize
but I
here
get it.
that the good news is, even with all these critiques and criticisms, none of this stuff kills the game for me. The overall package, what
agree.
Diablo 4 delivers, I really enjoy.
I think it's still going to be a fun
really
game.
liked the
It's got
and
some
I'm
pain
really
points that
looking
can be
forward
worked
to
on,
playing
but
it. These are
I think
just
it's a solid
areas
enough
of
starting
improvement, I
point,
guess I would
and I
say,
think
and
they
there's
have
some
the
pain
incentive
points that I
to
think
fix it
could
up.
be
So
improved upon, things that could be better. And I just want to quickly wrap
I
up
think
by
it's
saying
got
some
a- I
things
think it's
that
got a
I'd
good
like to see
future.
added within seasons or expansions or whenever. I'd love to see some larger scale encounters. So on the PvE side of things, I would love raids. I know a lot of people are against this, especially a lot of the core Diablo community. So if they never come to the game, I totally understand. But
there is that's an area of innovation. Well, not really, because Lost Ark has already done it. So even then, that's not innovative. Like, it's not brand spanking new, but that is an area where they can push the genre a bit and Blizzard's always been pretty good at boss designs, like raid boss designs, you know, for the most part. I don't, maybe not anymore. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've, you know, raided in World of Warcraft. So maybe they suck ass now, but I don't know. But I think raids would actually be an interesting addition to an ARPG. Honestly, like even just general, like not even necessarily like 10 or 20 man raids, but even like just general 5-man content, I think would be interesting. Because that's a big issue with ARPGs right now, is that they don't incentivize grouping up and hanging out with your pals. Because generally speaking, especially with Path of Exile, the most efficient way to play the game is by yourself. Because of the way everything works. And the fact that other people are just going to slow things down or make things drop in weird locations for you, and it's not great. So, incentivizing actually playing with people and giving you areas and arenas to do that in. I think Blizzard's usually pretty good at that kind of thing. So I would like to see them do that with Diablo 4. I think that would be cool.
I think there's a way you could implement kind of group activities.
Roaming raid bosses or an attempt to group. Yeah. They've already kind of toyed with it a little bit.
Challenging group content, even if it's just for like 3 to 4 people, where it requires a lot of coordination. It doesn't have to give the best rewards in the game. Just make
more
it
camera
so
distance.
That it has an
Camera distance is good.
Drop
I like it.
high level stuff as any
That's
other.
why I only got through the
does.
tutorial
That
match
would
when
be
I
a
tried
great
Dota.
Alternative, rather than just making like, oh, you only get the best gear, or you only
camera
get the
distance,
specific set from the
it can
raid
be a little
activity
tight at
or from
times
that really challenging
in a lot of
4-man
games.
group activity. No. Just make it equivalent and maybe reward special cosmetics if nothing else.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Unless
See,
you're just
like
trying to
I've heard that complaint a lot. Like, how do you reward? How do you make cosmetics? It's the easiest answer in the world. Unique cosmetics to the content. It doesn't hurt the progression of the game. It doesn't hurt people who don't want to do the raiding or the more difficult content or the group content or whatever. And it gives something. Do not underestimate the value of chasing the bling. Like, Guild Wars 2 has made an entire game out of chasing the bling. And people eat that shit up. I hear it's pretty popular in Final Fantasy as well. Like, bling is the end. Exactly. Like, if you put in raids and the only special thing you get out of them is cosmetics, people are going to do the raids. That is the easiest problem to solve in the fucking world. That is not even an issue. It doesn't need to drop a higher tier of gear or more powerful gear. Have it drop cool, unique cosmetics. Boom. Problem solved.
Cash shop, in which case I understand Blizzard. But also talking about larger scale encounters, PvP, I would absolutely love some like big team-based objective things.
Yeah,
like
capture
the flag
like
or zone controls or
yeah,
tower fights.
like battlegrounds and shit. That'd be cool too.
Where, you'd go in and there'd be like different factions.
Like that's something ARPGs don't have in any meaningful capacity. Is well, Lost Ark did arenas, but that's all. Like battleground oriented style PvP. Where it's just grouping in, you have secondary objectives and shit. It's not just about killing each other. Like, that's good. That's something that's kind of innovative. I know Path of Exile has that weird arena zone that you can go into, but that's just going in and slaughtering each other. It's not, necessarily particularly well balanced, unless they've done something new. But yeah. Group PvP stuff. That'd be cool too. Or like structured PvP stuff. I like that idea.
And depending on the faction that you were playing as, you would be battling the other faction. Call it light and dark. It's almost like another Diablo game did this already.
Yeah.
And then
that's
you could just
true,
battle over
true.
control of towers, and then whoever one gets, it's like a tug of war, pushing back and
Yeah,
forth. There's so many cool
See,
things
that's
you
a
can do
good way they
with
can go with
PvP
it. Yeah.
That I think would be great in Diablo.
It would put a little more
Speaking of which,
balance
I would love to
pressure
see
on
some
them, but
more-
it's an ARPG, so balance pressure is always going to be on them anyway. Like, even Path of Exile, without meaningful PvP, is constantly under balance pressure. So that's just always going to exist, so who cares if you throw PvP into the mix? Nothing's ever going to be perfectly balanced, that's why you have metas. It's fine. I think it would be a good addition.
PvP modes, things like arenas, solo arenas, or 2v2 or 3v3. I think it'd even be a great idea. Listen, we got normal and hardcore. What if there was just PvP? The whole game was PvP, right? You could play normal, where there was just PvP in Fields of Hatred. You could play hardcore, where if you die in PvE, or if you die in the Fields of Hatred, you're dead forever. What about PvP mode? where PvP open world is everywhere. That'd be pretty cool, I think. And then harder tier difficulties.
I don't
like
think that
mentioned,
one would be
give
as
us a tier
popular just
5.
because
I'm
of the
sure
weird
that's coming at some
disparities that there would
point,
be
I
for
almost
people.
guarantee. And then lastly, just give us more cool legendaries.
It'd be
as it
niche.
is.
There'd
There's
be
some pretty
people who
cool
are
build
into it, but I don't think
modifying
I don't know if
things,
it would be
especially
worth
with
the
uniques. Just
development
keep
effort that would
expanding
go
that,
into
keep
it.
adding more things
Maybe it
that
would. I don't
change
know.
abilities a lot, make it crazy.
Would I
Like
play
that
it?
is
Probably
my
not.
hope. But
I'd
there you
rather
go.
just have
That's gonna do
structured
it. Those are my
PvP
biggest
environments.
critiques, concerns
I think.
for Diablo 4. Ultimately, the game's great. I cannot wait to play it. We are like a
Yeah, no, it's a good video. I agree with some of his stuff, disagree with a little bit of it, but it's a reasonably balanced take on everything. So that's pretty good. I like Force Gaming's channel. Like I said, if I'm curious about something, I check here to see if he has an opinion on it, because he's pretty level-headed about all this stuff, so... There's a link to the video. Go ahead, give it some watch time. Give it an update, subscribe to the channel. He does a lot of videos about a lot of stuff, gaming-wise. Especially MMOs and multiplayer games like this.